There is a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from failure, but from repeatedly lowering yourself just to be understood. You slow down your explanations, soften your tone, simplify your words, and still receive the same empty stare, the mechanical nod, and then the same old behavior repeated as if the conversation never happened. What hurts is not that they disagree with you, but that they lack the capacity to reach what you are saying, yet you are the one who starts doubting yourself first. Why is it that the deeper you think, the more drained you become in communication? Why does the harder you try to be precise, the more you are misunderstood? Is it a lack of skill, or are you placing intellectual expectations on people who are not structured to receive them? This is the quietest form of injury. You are not attacked, not rejected, but slowly eroded by having to explain yourself to those who never truly listen. Niccolo Machiavelli looked directly at this mechanism when he wrote in chapter 18 of The Prince Men, "In general, judge more by the eyes than by the hands, for everyone can see, but few can feel." Human beings judge by what they see, not by what they understand. This is not a reproach, it is a strategic warning. And from here, the real question emerges: how should intelligent people deal with those who cannot think on the same level, without exhausting themselves, without sliding into contempt, and without losing control? How intelligent people deal with idiots is not about arrogance, it is about survival and position in a world that was not built for reason. Ruthless truth. In Machiavellian logic, power is never built on the assumption that human beings are rational, fair, or capable of independent thought. If you explain things well enough, power only appears when you accept a far colder truth. People operate primarily through self-interest, immediate emotion, and deeply ingrained habit, not through analysis or truth. Niccolo Machiavelli did not write for dreamers of human nature. He wrote for those lucid enough to face how people actually behave when unobserved by morality or ideals. Arthur Schopenhauer, a 19th century German philosopher, pushed this truth further and more brutally. Most people do not think they believe. They do not analyze. They repeat. They do not seek truth. They defend what has already been installed in their minds. In that picture, intelligence is not a universal standard, but a rare exception, even a statistical anomaly, and precisely because it is rare, it becomes dangerous when used in the wrong context. From this perspective, the survival strategy of the intelligent shifts from "how do I make people understand me" to "how do I avoid destroying myself through misplaced expectations." When you accept that intelligence is the exception rather than the shared foundation, everything changes: how you speak, how you remain silent, how you choose your battles, and most importantly, how you preserve control in a world not designed for reason, law. Most people do not think. They repeat. There is a strategic mistake intelligent people often make from the very beginning, and its cost does not arrive as a dramatic collapse, but as a slow erosion of inner force. The belief is this: if you speak clearly enough, logically enough, patiently enough, others will understand. This belief sounds civilized, even moral, but in the world of power, it is a dangerous illusion, because many conversations you think are dialogue are in fact collisions between someone who is thinking and someone who is merely repeating. You present arguments, they respond with slogans. You analyze consequences, they react with emotion. You ask questions, they close the exchange with sealed statements like "everyone knows that," "it's always been this way," or "it just doesn't feel right." This is not disagreement. This is a difference in operating level. In Machiavellian logic, the danger is not being opposed, it is misreading human nature. Niccolo Machiavelli never built his philosophy on the assumption that people think before they act. He observed the opposite: people act first, then use reason to justify afterward. So when you try to persuade with logic, you believe you are addressing thought. But in reality, you are activating the instinct to protect belief, an instinct tied to safety, status, and identity. Once that instinct is touched, thought withdraws. The history of power shows this pattern repeating endlessly. Those lacking the capacity to grasp strategy never fall silent to reflect. They hear fragments and repeat them as rumor, distortion, or covert resistance. Those who truly hold power learn a lesson early. Not everyone who hears understands, and not everyone who understands should be allowed to hear. They stop explaining, shift to observing behavior, and speak only to those capable of receiving. Order is not maintained by reasoning, but by controlling the flow of information. The intelligent person's mistake is not thinking deeply, it is expecting others to operate the same way. Machiavelli would call this a positioning error. You are speaking from a strategic layer to those who function only at the level of reflex. The result is not enlightenment but depletion. The more you speak, the more position you lose. The longer you explain, the more you drag yourself down to the plane of repetition. The reframe is here. When you accept that most people do not think, you do not become bitter or arrogant. You become precise. You stop listening to what they say and begin reading what they do. Because behavior does not lie. Someone may speak of reason, but their behavior will reveal reflex. Someone may speak of truth, but their behavior will expose the defense of familiar interest. The first law is therefore cold, but profoundly liberating. Do not expect thought where only repetition exists. When you stop seeking intelligence in the wrong places, you reclaim energy, composure, and position. You no longer need to win arguments or prove yourself right. You only need to understand who you are facing and act accordingly. That is, the Machiavellian core power does not belong to the one who speaks most correctly, but to the one who understands human nature earliest and has the discipline to stop speaking to those who can only repeat, before being dragged down with them. Law 2. Unbridgeable cognitive gaps exist. There is a subtle mistake intelligent people often confuse with patience, and its cost does not appear all at once, but slowly drains your time, energy, and position. It is the belief that if you explain better, slower, simpler, the distance between you and the other person will eventually disappear. This belief sounds reasonable, even humane, but in the world of power, it is a dangerous naivete, because not everyone refuses to understand you. Some people cannot understand, and that difference is structural, not a matter of effort. The moment you fail to distinguish between does not want to understand and cannot understand, you begin investing in the wrong battlefield. You keep speaking, keep explaining, keep lowering your language, while the other person remains fixed at the same point of awareness. Each loop does not move them forward, it pulls you downward. And in Machiavellian logic, any strategy that costs you position over time is a failed strategy, even if it is disguised as goodwill or patience. Intelligent people often believe communication is a technical problem, better wording, cleaner structure, more relatable examples. But power does not operate on technique, it operates on limits. There are limits that cannot be crossed by words, just as there are doors that do not open through effort. When you speak to someone who lacks the structure to receive what you are transmitting, you are not communicating, you are delivering a monologue to a wall, while convincing yourself that a few more sentences will create a miracle. In Machiavellian thinking, the greatest mistake is not failure, but not knowing when to stop. Niccolo Machiavelli understood that power does not come from dragging everyone to the same level, but from correctly identifying each person's level and acting accordingly. The astute do not argue with limits. They use limits to position strategy, When you continue speaking to someone who cannot understand, you are not helping them. You are sending a very dangerous signal that you need them to understand. And in the world of power, that need always places you at a disadvantage. Consider this simple but ruthless analogy. You do not teach algebra to someone who has not grasped addition and subtraction, not because they are lazy, and not because they are morally inferior, but because the foundation required to receive that knowledge has never existed. If you continue explaining, you are not building a bridge. You are standing before a chasm, persuading yourself that a few more words will fill the gap. In reality, the gap remains. Only your exhaustion becomes more visible. The intelligent person's mistake is believing every distance is temporary. Machiavellian logic is colder. Some distances are permanent in that context, not because people cannot change, but because change does not occur on your demand, on your timeline, and rarely within a power relationship where you are the one explaining. When you keep talking, keep trying, you are not only wasting resources, you are weakening the image of yourself as someone in control. The reframe is here, and it is uncomfortable but liberating. Intelligent people do not measure successful communication by whether others understand, but by whether they retain position. The moment you recognize an unbridgeable gap, the strongest choice is not more effort, but silent withdrawal. No anger, no contempt, no explanation, because any explanation at this point only deepens the misalignment. In the Machiavellian world, timely withdrawal is not failure. It is power preservation. You do not need to win every conversation. You only need to avoid losing by dragging yourself into incompatible terrain. When you stop trying to fill chasms that were never designed to be filled, you begin to move lighter, faster, and with greater precision. Thus, the second law is cold, but practical. Some cognitive gaps cannot be bridged. When you accept this, you stop blaming yourself for conversations that go nowhere. Stop investing in those who lack the capacity to receive, and begin selecting where to place your intelligence, time, and presence. You do not need to be understood by everyone. You only need to stop weakening yourself through misplaced expectation. In Machiavelli's world, the one who goes farthest is not the one who carries the most people, but the one who knows when to advance and when to turn away. And the person who understands the cognitive limits of others always retains a silent advantage. They are not slowed by gaps, never meant to be bridged, and they never need permission to continue their journey. Law 3. Confidence is not intelligence. There is a dangerous illusion in the world of power, one that causes countless intelligent people to weaken themselves without realizing it, the illusion that confidence equals competence. On the surface, those who speak loudly, decisively, without hesitation often project dominance, and that very impression deceives those who still believe reason determines order. In reality, loud confidence rarely comes from understanding. It comes from insufficient capacity to doubt oneself. Those lacking intelligence almost never slow down to self-question. They do not stop to ask whether they might be wrong, because asking that question requires a capacity they do not possess, the ability to perceive their own limits. So they speak with certainty. They speak quickly. They speak as if no alternative exists. And that certainty becomes the trap. Intelligent people, still respectful of reason, begin to believe that enough evidence, enough logic, enough sharp argument will make that confidence collapse. That is the mistake. In Machiavellian logic, you never confront aggressive stupidity head-on, not because it is strong, but because it does not play by the same rules. You are bringing reason into a confrontation where the other side operates on instinct and blind certainty. In that game, reason is not a weapon, it is a vulnerability. Every argument you offer only gives them more stage to perform their certainty. while you are slowly dragged into the position of having to prove yourself. Machiavelli understood this clearly. He observed that power lies not in who speaks more correctly, but in who preserves position. When you argue with someone confident but uninformed, you implicitly acknowledge that they deserve debate. In that moment, you lower yourself to their level. Those who truly hold power rarely fall into this trap. They are not provoked by loud voices. They are not pulled into the need to prove they are right. They observe, remember, and decide on an entirely different plane. Steve Jobs exemplified this cold control. In meetings, he rarely engaged in long debates with people who were wrong but extremely confident. He let them finish, without interruption or point-by-point rebuttal, then ended with a brief decision grounded in his position. No explanation, no persuasion. Jobs understood that argument only gives the loud what they crave most: attention. Here, the difference between intelligence and power becomes stark. The intelligent try to win through reasoning. Those with power do not play that game. They understand that blind confidence cannot be defeated by argument, because it was never built on argument in the first place. It is built on a false sense of security, the inability to perceive one's own limits, and that illusion collapses only when reality collides with it. Not when someone tries to explain. The reframe is here, and it is deeply strategic. When you encounter someone extremely confident but shallow, the strongest move is not rebuttal, but withdrawal from the argumentative frame. You do not need to tell them they are wrong. You do not need to prove they lack understanding. You simply refuse to give them a stage. In the Machiavellian world, refusal to engage is already a declaration of power. Thus, the third law is cold. But effective confidence is not intelligence. Do not confuse volume with depth, certainty with understanding, or aggression with competence. When you stop confronting aggressive stupidity, you do not become weaker, you rise above it. You preserve energy for games worth playing, silence for strategic moments, and your position from being dragged down by those who are powerful only in the sound of their own voices. In Machiavelli's world, the winner is not the one who speaks the loudest in the room, but the one who does not need to speak for others to adjust. And once you understand that, another person's noisy confidence ceases to threaten you. It becomes a signal that it is time to move to a higher level, where argument is unnecessary and power speaks for itself. Law 4 of emotion precedes reason. There is a common illusion that keeps intelligent people falling into the same communication trap: the belief that if an argument is correct enough, tight enough, rational enough, another person's false belief will collapse. This illusion is not naive in a harmless way, it is dangerous in a strategic way, because it makes you bring logic into a terrain where logic was never the deciding factor. In the reality of power, people do not think and then feel. They feel first and then think, and the thinking often arrives afterward like a thin coat of paint to disguise the emotion that already decided the conclusion. Intelligent people usually realize this too late. They enter a conversation assuming they are speaking to reason, while from the beginning they are standing in front of an emotion that is being protected. When you present facts, what you receive is not consideration but indignation. When you analyze consequences, the response is not a rebuttal, but I feel like that's not right. At that moment, the game ended before you even noticed, because the conclusion was decided long ago, and reason is only summoned afterward to legalize it. In Machiavellian logic, this is the crucial line between those who understand power and those who only understand arguments. Niccolò Machiavelli observed that people are driven by what touches their emotions and interests, not by what is correct in abstraction. Reason is not the primary engine of behavior. It is a tool used when behavior needs justification, and therefore, When you try to use logic to change a belief born from emotion, you are not debating, you are ramming your head into an invisible wall. The intelligent person's mistake is not believing in reason, but believing reason works in every context. They think truth has automatic force, that if truth is presented clearly enough, it will correct the order on its own. But in the world of power, truth does not win by itself. It only has effect when the context allows it to have effect. When emotion holds the center, reason is not a weapon, it is the one removed from the table. Observe a situation you know too well, you offer clear, verifiable facts. And the first thing you receive is not a question, but a defensive tone. Not because the facts are wrong, but because the facts threaten the other person's underlying emotion, belief, identity, or their status inside the group. And when emotion is threatened, the brain does not try to understand, it tries to protect. Reason, at that point, becomes a defense attorney, not a judge. Machiavelli understood that the astute do not confront emotion directly with arguments. They read emotion to decide whether entry is even worth it. The moment you realize you are speaking to emotion rather than thought, the strongest move is not to continue, but to stop. No arguing, no persuading, no trying to open someone's eyes, because every additional sentence in that context only deepens their defensiveness and drags you into a game you cannot win. The reframe is here, and it is unmistakably strategic. The intelligent do not measure success by how correct they sounded, but by whether they chose the right terrain. When logic is no longer the currency of exchange, silence becomes the wisest action. You do not need to defeat another person's emotion. You only need to refuse to let their emotion decide your behavior. That is why the fourth law is cold. But exact emotion comes first. Reason comes second. Once you understand this, you stop wasting intelligence on debates that are not designed for logic. Stop exhausting yourself in the role of the explainer, and start preserving energy for contexts where reason actually holds value. You no longer react to another person's anger, fear, or defensiveness. You observe it as data and decide whether to proceed or withdraw with cold clarity. In Machiavelli's world, the strong are not those who win every argument, but those who do not enter arguments whose outcomes were decided by emotion in advance. And the moment you stop trying to persuade emotion with reason, you do not lose your voice, you reclaim control. Law V. Never fight the crowd. There is a strategic mistake intelligent people often make while they still believe reason can defeat the majority. The belief that if you provide enough correct arguments, enough clear evidence, enough tight analysis, the collective will gradually recognize the truth and adjust. This belief sounds noble, even democratic, but in the world of power, it is a dangerous illusion, because intelligence does not accumulate inside a crowd. It does not increase. It dissolves. Inside a crowd, what gets rewarded is not independent thinking, but synchronization, not depth, but simplicity, not truth, but the feeling of belonging. Intelligent people step into collective spaces expecting rational dialogue, and in that moment, they have already placed themselves in a losing position, because the crowd does not arrive to think, they arrive to agree, to be validated, to avoid standing alone with uncomfortable doubt. In Machiavellian logic, this is a foundational rule. When people merge into a collective, they do not become smarter, they become easier to steer. Niccolo Machiavelli observed this, not as theory, but through the brutal political reality of Renaissance Italy. The same person, when alone, can still weigh, hesitate, even question themselves, but once absorbed into a crowd in the square, they become simple, extreme, and ready to shout things they might not even believe in private. Not because they become worse, but because individual intelligence is diluted by collective emotion. The intelligent person's mistake is failing to understand that the crowd does not run on argument, it runs on emotional weather. When you speak complexity, the crowd hears threat. When you speak against the current, they feel separation from the group. And in that moment, their natural reflex is not to think, but to exclude. Not because you are wrong, but because you are no longer in rhythm. In the world of power, being out of sync with the collective is a dangerous position, and the crowd will react to protect its own consensus. Machiavelli understood that the wise never seek recognition from the majority. He knew the crowd cannot be persuaded by reason, because they did not come to be persuaded, they came to be led. And you do not lead crowds with truth, you lead them with images, symbols, and simple emotion. If the intelligent person does not possess that steering power, then the best move is not to enter at all. Look back at the Renaissance Italian piazzas, where speeches rose above seas of people. What decided the outcome was not deep content, but rhythm, slogan, and the ability to ignite shared emotion. Complex ideas, no matter how true, were crushed beneath applause and chanting. Machiavelli drew a cold conclusion. The crowd is always less intelligent than the individual, and the larger it grows, the more easily it can be pushed along straight, simple lines. The wise see this and do not place themselves in a position where they must argue with the collective. The reframe is here. Intelligent people do not measure strength by their ability to persuade the crowd, but by their ability to avoid being swallowed by it. When you face a collective operating on emotion, the strongest move is not to speak louder, clearer, or sharper. It is to withdraw from that space, not because you are afraid, but because you understand the game. You do not lose by being silent. You lose the moment you try to play a game whose rules were never built for intelligence. The Machiavellian principle is clear. Do not persuade the crowd, avoid them. The wise influence individuals in closed spaces, where collective identity no longer masks the capacity to think, or they influence nothing at all. Because not every truth needs to be spoken, and not every audience deserves to be addressed. That is why the fifth law is cold, but deeply survival-based. When you stop searching for rational dialogue in collective spaces, you stop turning yourself into a target. You protect your intelligence from being eroded by noise. Protect your position from being dissolved into forced consensus. And preserve your energy for places where individual thought still has room to breathe. In Machiavelli's world, the winner is not the one the crowd applauds, but the one who does not need the crowd to maintain power. And the moment you understand that intelligence dissolves inside the collective, you stop trying to shine in the crowd and start building strength in spaces where intelligence remains intact. Law V. Truth is, for the few, not the many. There is a moral illusion that quietly places many intelligent people in a weaker position without them noticing the illusion that telling the truth is always the right thing to do, and that if the truth is clear enough, precise enough, it will be welcomed. In an ideal world, that might be true, but in the world of power, it is a severe strategic mistake, because most people are not searching for truth. They are searching for comfort, and between a truth that hurts and a lie that soothes, they almost always choose the second. Truth demands change. It forces people to admit they were wrong, that their choices have consequences, that the identity they cling to is no longer safe. That is not merely uncomfortable, it directly threatens their sense of control. In that context, the one who brings truth is not seen as an enlightener, but as a source of instability, and the natural human reflex to instability is not listening, it is exclusion. Intelligent people often do not understand this until they have paid for it. They speak plainly, they speak honestly, they believe they are doing what is right. But what they receive is not respect, it is defensiveness, resentment, even hostility, not because they are wrong, but because they offered truth to people who lack the capacity to receive it. In Machiavellian logic, this is not courage, it is wasted resources. Niccolo Machiavelli never treated truth as a moral obligation to be distributed to everyone. He understood that truth, like power, only has value when used with the right person, at the right time, in the right context. The astute do not ask, "Is this true?" they ask. "What will this produce if I say it now?" When you speak truth without controlling consequences, you are not acting nobly. You are exposing yourself to unnecessary risk. Think of truth as strong liquor. For someone accustomed to it, it brings clarity and depth. But for someone without the capacity, it does not awaken, it intoxicates. Giving strong liquor to someone who cannot handle it does not create intelligence, it creates a negative reaction. And in many cases, that reaction takes the form of denial, personal attacks, or attempts to discredit the bearer of truth. Intelligent people learn this not from books, but from being turned on simply for speaking too early. The greatest mistake of the intelligent is believing people want to wake up. Most do not want to wake up. They want to sleep inside a familiar story. And any truth that contradicts that story is treated as a threat. Machiavellian logic does not judge this as good or bad. It simply records it as how humans operate. Once you understand that, you stop trying to save others with truth, and you begin preserving your position. The reframe is here, and it is cold. Intelligent people do not treat truth-telling as a duty. They treat it as a strategic decision. Some truths should be spoken only in closed spaces, to those who have proven they can receive them. Some truths should be withheld, not out of fear, but because timing is unripe. And some truths do not need to be spoken at all, because reality will speak on your behalf when the moment arrives. In the Machiavellian world, truth is not a free gift. It is a resource, and every resource, when distributed carelessly, loses value and backfires. When you learn to reserve truth for the right person at the right time, you do not become deceitful, you become effective. You do not need to persuade the majority. You only need to avoid becoming their target. That is why the sixth law is practical truth, is for the few, not the many. Once you accept this, you stop being obsessed with saying everything you know. Stop placing yourself in the role of an unwilling awakener, and begin using silence as an instrument of power. You speak less, but every word carries weight. You share selectively, and those who receive it understand its value. In Machiavelli's world, the one who survives the longest is not the most honest in a naive sense, but the one who knows when to speak truth and when to let truth reveal itself. And the moment you understand that truth does not need to be shouted to exist, you step into a different level of control where intelligence is no longer consumed by performative morality, but used as a precise, cold weapon, without waste. Law 8. Conceal intelligence. Display control. There is a paradox. Intelligent people often recognize only after they have paid the price. Intelligence, exposed in the wrong place, does not create respect. It creates hostility. In a world where most people do not operate through deep thinking, your sharpness is not read as competence, it is felt as a silent insult. You do not need to call anyone unintelligent. It is enough that you understand faster, see farther, connect what they cannot see, and that alone triggers defensiveness. And that defensiveness rarely takes the shape of learning, it takes the shape of resistance. Intelligent people often make a subtle mistake. They want to be recognized as intelligent, They believe that if others see their depth, order will adjust, roles will settle, and respect will arrive. But in Machiavellian logic, the desire to be recognized is the first weakness, because the moment you need others to validate your intelligence, you hand them the power to price you. And power, once outside your hands, never operates the way you wish. Machiavelli understood this early. He observed that people do not hate the foolish, they hate the one who makes them feel foolish. Paraphrase: intelligence displayed in the wrong context does not create order, it creates instability in the perception of those around you. And once instability appears, the human reflex is not to rise, it is to pull the other down. The history of power repeats this lesson endlessly. Wise rulers rarely performed their intelligence before the entire court. They did not enter long, complex speeches to prove they understood more than everyone else. Instead, they spoke briefly, decided clearly, and kept depth for a small circle of advisors who had proven the capacity to receive it. Not because they lacked intelligence, but because they understood that public intelligence creates enemies, while control creates order. The intelligent person's mistake is confusing, being seen as intelligent with holding power. In the Machiavellian world, these two not only fail to overlap, they often conflict directly. When you speak too deeply, too much, too clearly, you force others to face their limits. And very few people thank you for that. Most will deny, attack, or discredit you not because you are wrong, but because your presence destabilizes the psychological order they rely on. The reframe is here, and it is decisive. Intelligent people do not need to be seen as intelligent. They need to be seen as stable, unmovable, and in control. In the world of power, stability creates a sense of safety, and safety produces compliance. You do not need to prove you know more. You only need to show that you cannot be pulled into chaos, cannot be provoked into impulsive reactions, and do not need to speak much to hold your position. The Machiavellian strategy is therefore cold, but effective. Conceal intelligence, display control. You do not hide out of fear, you restrain out of understanding. You choose where to reveal depth, choose who deserves your thinking, and let the rest of the world see only one thing, that you are steady, unshaken, uninterested in explanation, unavailable for proof. This final law closes the entire axis with brutal clarity. Power does not come from others admiring your intelligence. Power comes from others being unable to make you lose control. Intelligence is the inner foundation, but what should be allowed to show externally is composure, consistency, and decision. Once order is established, your intelligence no longer needs to be displayed. It has already done its job, and this is what Machiavelli always implied, even if he never offered it as comfort in this world. The respected are not those who make others see how intelligent they are, but those who make others adjust their behavior around them without ever understanding why. When you learn to conceal intelligence and display control, you do not merely avoid hostility, you enter a durable form of power, where your presence creates order on its own, and that order speaks louder than any proof. Conclusion: after all these laws, there is one cold truth that must be locked in, not to comfort you, but to stop you from wasting energy on battles that were never designed to be won. Most people cannot think deeply, not because they are evil, and not because you are morally superior, but because that is the operating structure of the human world. You cannot fix them, you cannot pull them upward with logic, and the more you try, the more you slow yourself down, but that does not make you powerless. It only forces you to change position. Acceptance here is not surrender, it is a relocation of power. When you stop expecting intelligence where it does not exist, you do not become bitter, you become precise. You conserve energy, You speak less. You observe more. And you begin choosing the right places to put your presence. From that moment, you no longer need to win arguments. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer need to prove you are right. You only need to refuse to step into frames built to exhaust you. Your silence is not avoidance, it is strategy. Your withdrawal is not defeat, it is choosing terrain. And within that selectiveness, power returns. If what you just heard made you see the world more clearly, colder, and more real, tap like to mark that you are ready to abandon the illusions that keep you weak. Share this video with the ones still exhausting themselves, trying to speak to the wrong people. And subscribe to the channel. Because what ended here is not advice. It is a level of awareness. And the next levels will be even sharper. Leave a comment below. It doesn't need to be long, just one sentence. Where have you wasted your intelligence the most? That answer isn't for me. It's for you.